You married into this family, but you still prioritize your mother before us. Do you think that's acceptable? It's your punishment for neglecting the housework. Get out. My mother-in-law laughed hysterically while throwing my late mother's belongings into the incinerator. I was stunned. You're not doing that without knowing the true values of those items, are you? You say you've lived a first-class life, surrounded by first-class things. That's right. I declared something important to her as she snorted at me and left my in-laws' house. I'm Madison, a 28-year-old sales executive. My husband Josh and I are co-workers and still work at the same company. We've been married for 4 years and been living with my in-laws for about 1 year for a reason. My in-laws are an affluent family and reside in a massive compound. Josh and I are giving our old small house away from the main building. We live separately but are very close to each other. Josh is the second son, and his older brother is supposed to inherit the family property. Since he has been temporarily posted abroad for his work, we have moved in to take care of his house. My mother-in-law Janet does not think well of me and harasses me with sarcastic comments and little misdeeds. I've been struggling to deal with her. My father's side of the family has an old history, but he passed away from illness when I was very young. My mother raised me on her own. Janet scorns that I come from a single-parent family in which the mother is still working, and I too work instead of being a full-time housewife. Even though you're married, you refuse to be a housewife and take advantage of living with your in-laws. Don't you realize how shameless you are? You must be greedy with money coming from a single mother home. How can you not be satisfied with Josh's income? She sarcastically criticizes me whenever she sees me. However, in front of Josh and my father-in-law, she's cheerful with a smile on her face. I've been overwhelmed by this gap and haven't been able to talk to Josh about her bullying. Since I haven't resisted her, she's been increasing her maliciousness toward me. Once a week, we all have dinner together at the main house. One night, she mentions, I want to ask Madison to clean the shed for me sometime soon. I always ask our cleaners, but I want her to be familiar with what's inside. She asks with an apologetic expression. A shed? I don't mind, but I don't see the point in me checking inside. That's not true. As a family member who lives in this house, it's good for you to know about the history. She immediately denies my comment. If it's okay with you, honey, go right ahead. But we are leaving as soon as my brother comes back, so you don't really have to. Josh helps me out. I don't have any special plans for my next day off, so if you just want me to clean it up, I'd be happy to do it. I don't think I could go so far as to memorize or figure out what's in there though. I know it would be a bad idea to refuse her, so I decide to go along. On my day off, I follow Janet to the shed. Inside is covered in dust, as if it's never been cleaned, contrary to what she had mentioned. Well, start cleaning. I'm stunned at the state of the shed as she turns to leave. How do you want me to clean it? You're not making me to do it alone, are you? I ask her out of disbelief. Of course, you always neglect your housework using your job as an excuse. You should be doing more on your days off. Just get on with it. She puts on a disgusting smile and shuts the door, leaving me inside. I hear a questionable clunking sound. I'll check on you every hour. I'll let you out of here when it's perfectly clean, so get on with it. She yells from outside the door. I rush to open it, but it's already been locked. There's a locker with cleaning supplies and a water pipe on the wall. I have no choice but to start cleaning. My phone is left behind, and there's no clock in the room. I have no idea how long it has been since I started cleaning. I'm becoming fearful of the situation. After all, Janet rarely comes to check on me, despite saying every hour, and shows up randomly. You know, I've been living a first-class life surrounded by first-class things. I understand the value of the items here, but you don't, do you? She comes just to make sarcastic remarks. Well, take this opportunity to get a good sense of the value of all this today. She closes the door again and walks away. I've been cleaning since early morning, and she's finally satisfied in the evening. I'm able to escape from the dingy shed at last. I wasn't even allowed to have lunch. I walk back home feeling lightheaded, and I'm determined to speak to Josh about it. I'm sorry to do this as soon as you're home, but I need to talk to you about something. When I mention it, he senses something. Is this about my mother? I'm surprised, but I start explaining what happened today and how Janet's been treating me. He listens attentively and apologizes to me. I'm really sorry that I didn't realize it before. I know she sometimes looks down on people and harasses them in small ways when she doesn't like something. But this is the first time I hear she's done something to that extent. I'm confused as to why I should believe your every word. I mean, I can't make a clear judgment right away. I haven't said anything about it to you for a long time, and I understand that you don't want to believe anything bad about your mother. I'm not asking you to do something about it right away. I just don't want to be alone with her as much as possible from now on. I'm so exhausted that I don't even wait for his reply and pass out on the bed. The subject has remained open. I try to stay away from the main house as much as possible, and don't join the weekly dinner using my work as an excuse. Meanwhile, Janet plays the role of modest mother-in-law. I wonder if Madison doesn't think well of me asking her to clean the shed. I don't want her to be mad at me. Josh's been even more confused about what to make of the difference between what I've told him and what Janet's been saying. She has explained to him about locking me inside the shed as, "I'll never do such a thing." And Madison was so absorbed in her work that she forgot to take lunch. I'm sorry I didn't remind her. I didn't feel comfortable interrupting someone who was concentrating on the work. Then one day, I get a call that my mother has collapsed, and I rush to the hospital. The doctor tells me that she has been suffering from terminal cancer, and that she has asked him not to mention it to me before. I let Josh know that I'm going to stay with her for the remaining days. Shortly thereafter, she passes away slowly and peacefully. Unable to accept the reality, I'm stunned by the sudden departure of my loved one. Your mother won't be at ease unless you give her a proper send-off. I managed to hold myself together thanks to Josh's support. She has left me many vintage designers apparel and antique ceramics, which were her hobbies, as mementos. I take them back to my house and keep them for the time being. Then the disaster happens while I'm sorting out the medical bills and inheritance. When I arrive home, I see smoke rising from the incinerator, which has been hardly used in the yard. I'm thinking that it's none of my business and don't pay any particular attention at this point. When I start sorting out my late mother's belongings, I found that most of them have gone missing. I immediately think about the smoke and rush to the site with a bad feeling. A pile of clothes and ceramics and Janet trying to throw them into the fire come into my view. What in the crazy world are you doing? If you're home, why don't you let me know you're back? What are you doing here today? Why do you have them here? Give them back. You're so vulgar, snapping at me. They're not worth much anyway, so I thought I'd help you get rid of them. What on earth are you talking about? You married my son, and you put your mother before him and his family. Do you think that's acceptable? It's your punishment for neglecting the housework. Get out of here. You're not doing that without knowing the true values of those items, are you? You say you've lived a first-class life surrounded by first-class things. Those are worth at least $100,000. I'm going to press charges on you. I declare that much and then gather up the scattered items on the ground. You gotta be kidding me. You can't try to cheat me out of my money. You better leave Josh. Ignoring her ranting and raving, I pack up my belongings and leave my in-laws' house to stay at an apartment where my late mother lived. I go through the items and realize that many are still missing, and the remains have been damaged by being trampled on or mishandled. I immediately called the attorney who assisted me with my late mother's estate and asked him to start the process of property damage charge. I also called Josh and explained what's going on. Your mother burned my mother's mementos and told me to leave the house. So I packed up my belongings and left. I then explained to him everything that has happened. I tell him that I'm going to file a charge against her and that I'll never want anything to do with her in the future. I also mentioned that I would not interfere in any way between him and his mother, but that I would like to divorce him if I have to continue dealing with her. I sent him a video of Janet burning my late mother's belongings and let him hear the voice recording of her rant. Instead of coming to ambiguous conclusion like last time, he is forced to recognize that she has been malicious toward me. Her behavior this time is way out of line, and I reiterate to him that I never ever want anything to do with her. At first, he's still somewhat reluctant to believe what I'm telling him is true, but with the evidence, he's forced to accept it. He sincerely apologizes to me and promises that he will sever all ties with her too. I'm relieved to hear that, and then I again speak to my attorney to calculate the damages. When the calculation is done, I visit my in-laws with the claim. My in-laws have been notified in advance, and both of them are there to greet us. First, my attorney tells them that Janet's action falls under the charge of destruction of property, and the value of damage is more than $100,000. Wait a minute, they're just some clothes and ceramics. There can't be that much money. Janet snickers and denies the amount of money. I'm sure as I've asked an appraiser to confirm the value of each item. Are you telling me that you, who have been living a first-class life surrounded by first-class things, don't recognize the worth of those items? When I snicker back at her, her face turns bright red. Don't try to deceive me. The value of those things goes down as they age. Then my attorney patiently explains that she is indeed correct if things are not well taken care of. However, my late mother's collection falls into a rare and high-demand category. The value has jumped because they've been produced in such small quantity, or the artists have already passed away. He carefully explains that each item has been reappraised at the time of inheritance. After listening to this, Janet still keeps fussing. My father-in-law, who has been quiet all this time, finally opens his mouth. "Be quiet." He silences her at once and asks me if I remember the date when I cleaned the shed. To my surprise, surveillance cameras have been installed inside and outside of the shed for security purposes. He suggests we check the footage from that day. The data from the recordings has just barely survived. It starts showing Janet and me, then only her coming out of the shed. Then she locks the door from the outside, which is clearly shown on the screen. The view of her checking on me randomly, and finally me coming out of the shed staggering, are all recorded in front of us. Moreover, there's even a recording of Janet bringing boxes and clothes and ceramics to the incinerator and burning them one after another. Explain this. She fluttered seeing the inexcusable footage. Madison has been neglecting our home. She has only cared about her mother for so long. I thought I would punish her a little. She mumbles in a trembling voice. Isn't it normal for anyone to take care of their mothers? Besides, we are indebted to her for living with us and taking care of the house while Morgan's away. We ask her to do so. But she married Josh, so she should give priority to her husband's family. You send money to your own family every month, don't you? You leave the housework to the staff, and you don't even do anything yourself. When he scolds her, she falls silent and hangs her head down. He stands up from his seat and comes in front of me. I am truly sorry for everything she has done. She will pay for the damages. He gives me a sincere apology and bends down to hug me. Janet agrees to make amends for the damage, but she pleads not to file a legal proceeding. She promises to pay me a settlement instead. After consulting with my attorney, I accept her offer with a condition. She must work and pay from her own pocket. As for the damages, my father-in-law will advance the payment, but Janet will pay him back. Josh hardly says a word during the discussion. He was stunned by the sight of his mother, who has always been sweet, ranting. It's worse than he ever imagined. On the way home, I had never seen my mother so crazy. I was in disbelief. He slaps his shoulders as he mumbles. After that, my father-in-law had sent Janet back to her parents and has terminated the financial support. He's also demanding she repays him for the advancement, and she's been asking Josh and his brother for help. Josh has blocked her from contacting him. As for his brother, don't come to me for help for what you've done. He too has shut her off. As for me, I've sent some of the damaged items for repair at Josh's expense. Some of them have been restored to their original condition. Since they've been a waste of treasures in my possession, I've donated them to charities for auction, except for the ones with special memories. Janet has never worked before and has only experienced a financially comfortable life. She finds a job, but gets fired for causing problems, or quits her own immediately. My father-in-law tells me, I don't think she will complete the payment anytime soon from the way things have been going. I should pay you first. I refused, and instead, I set a deadline for the payment of the settlement through my attorney. Janet and her parents are informed that if the deadline wasn't met, I would press charges. Her parents are so concerned about their public image that they sent her to work at a factory owned by a relative. She's been managing to make the installment payments since then. Although my father-in-law has been fed up with her, he's not considering divorce. I don't want to get involved with my mother, but I need to keep in touch with my father. Is that okay with you? Josh asks me. I've been receiving the settlement. As long as I don't have to deal with her in the future, I'm not going to stop you from doing anything. His brother is coming home at the end of this year. He's yet to marry and has been questioning Janet. If I get married, are you going to bully my wife too? Depending on her attitude, she may not be allowed to return home. We've started a new life in a new residence. Josh has been keeping in touch only with his father and has been hearing about his mother from him. I haven't forgiven her for what she's done. I don't know if I will ever be able to. I'm hoping that in the unlikely event that she ever reforms, she would apologize to me in person. Right now, I'm enjoying my life alone with Josh. I know he's a little unreliable, but I would like to build a happy family that reassures my mother in heaven.
I'm Sandy, 28 years old. My husband Morgan and I got married a year ago through an office romance. We met when he was in charge of training new hires. I had just moved from a different industry and had no idea what I was doing at my new job. He kindly and patiently trained me. I think it didn't take me long to fall for him. When the training was over and I had learned most of the work, I invited him out to dinner to thank him for all the help he had given me. After that, we continued to see each other several times outside of work, and I took the plunge and confessed my feelings to him. We were both around an age where we were thinking about getting married. So about 2 years after we started dating, we met each other's family. We had smooth sailing into our marriage after that. One of the common issues of marriage I often hear is a relationship with in-laws, but I haven't encountered such problems so far. My in-laws have been very good to me. We are so glad to have you as a daughter-in-law. You are too good for my son.
I agree. I envy my son to have such a beautiful lady for a wife.
Oh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you. When Noah and I occasionally visit them, they give me such compliments and make me feel loved. I may be simple-minded, but I don't feel bad about being praised. If you force me to come up with an issue, it would be about where we live. Right now, we live in a rented apartment. If we were to start a family, it would be too small. I suppose we could move when we have a baby, but after the baby is born, things are going to get a little hectic.
I agree. I think it's a good idea to buy a house beforehand.
Now? Isn't that a little too early?
You think so? You said you dreamed of gardening in your own yard, right? I'd rather have a house than an apartment. It's a good opportunity for us.
We both work, so if we don't splurge, we can probably get a loan for a reasonable amount. Now that he mentions it, a new house sounds certainly nice. Once I get the idea, I'll start visiting real estate agencies with Morgan on weekends. My parents are very supportive of the idea and are helping us find a house and giving us advice on mortgage and property contracts. One day, we are asked to come to my parents' house for a talk. We head out, wondering what it's about. There, I find my grandfather. He has been living alone since my grandmother passed away a few years ago. Because of his age, my parents have been asking him to move in with them, but he hasn't accepted the offer yet. I don't know what his true motive is, but he may not want to let go of the house filled with memories of late grandmother.
I heard that you are looking for a house.
Yeah, but we haven't been able to find the one that fits our criteria.
If you want, you can use the land I have left and build a house on it. You don't have to pay for the land, and you can put the money toward the house.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, I'm sure. I'd be happy to let you guys use it.
Thank you, Grandpa. He's not a rich man. It's just that his family has been farmers for generations and owns a lot of unused lands. He has offered us one of the lots, which is in his name. On top of it, my parents have proposed to cover part of the construction cost. Our plan is turning into reality. Over the next few weeks, we discuss specifics with a contractor. Then I receive a call from my mother-in-law one day. I heard you are building your own home. Oh yes, my grandfather is letting us use his land. Oh, I see. You know, if you're building a new house, why don't we live together? You mean you, Jacob, and us? Listen, our house is getting old, you know. If we want to keep living here, it will need a major renovation. We've been thinking about what to do. But if you guys are going to build a house, we can kill two birds with one stone. Now we won't have to pay for the renovation. What on earth is she thinking? It is true that their house is getting old, so the story about renovation may be true. But it's not like the house is dilapidated and needs to be torn down right now. Above all, I don't understand why they have to move in with us. As I'm stunned by this unexpected and sudden turn of events, Morgan, who has been listening to the conversation next to me, takes over the phone.
Hey, Mom. What are you talking about? Moving in together all of a sudden? What we are thinking right now is a home for us as a family.
What? You're saying we aren't family?
No, no one is saying that.
Even if we move in together, it doesn't mean we expect you to take care of us. It's rather the opposite. You're both working, right? If I'm there, I can reduce the burden of housework a lot.
That might be true, but...
And you're our eldest son. Sooner or later, you will have to take care of us. It's normal, isn't it? Then, when you're going to build a house, you should think about living together, right?
But...
Adele has been good to me up to now. I honestly don't like her idea, but I can't be too harsh on her. Morgan, who is last resort, has a strong sense of responsibility. He seems to be completely taken in by her. In the end,
I'm sorry. I should have said no. I mean, I shouldn't have told my mom about it in the first place.
No, it's not your fault. Besides, she agreed to pay the rest of the cost. We agreed with her when she promised to pay for half of the construction cost with the money from the sale of the house. Reluctantly, I didn't expect it to happen so soon. Morgan has told me before that when they reach an age where their health becomes a concern, he is thinking about living together. When it happens, I thought I would just accept it quietly. It's too soon and so sudden. But now that I've agreed to it, I can go back to her and say I changed my mind. If she really helps me with the housework, it will indeed reduce my burden. Maybe it's not all bad. It's a shame that I will have less private time with Morgan, but I try my best to think that there are some advantages to living together. I have no choice but to do so. I'd like it to be all electric. We will install a solar power generator. A dishwasher is essential in the kitchen. I want a jacuzzi in the backyard. From then on, Adele interfered with our plans with more demands than we originally had in mind. She even changed the floor plan and facilities, so the price exceeded our plan by a large margin. Now that the house is ready, she still hasn't paid us the money she had promised. Well, Adele, we have to pay the contractor. What's going on with your promise? Oh, that. It seems that they are late in transferring the money for the sale of the house. Can you pay for it first? I will pay you back later. No way, I can't do that. What do you mean? You're both making money, so you have plenty, don't you? I had Morgan urge her several times to pay the money, but my in-laws never paid when it was due. I ended up having to beg my parents for a loan. My in-laws promised to cover the shortfall in construction cost, so we did not apply for a mortgage. Even though both of us have been working, we haven't been able to save that much money in such a short time. There was no way to cover for my in-laws as easily as Adele thought. We promised my parents that we would pay them back as soon as my in-laws paid us. Whoa, it turned out nicer than I thought it would. Don't you think so?
I do.
The in-laws look at the completed house from the outside and are very pleased with it. As soon as they get a set of keys, they move in right away. Jacob, who has somewhat more common sense than Adele, seems to have some thought on the matter, but he's too meek to say anything. Adele invites her friends to the house and throws a home-warming party every day like she's the owner. What do you think? Isn't it amazing? It may be a little cramped for two families, but it has a big yard. I'm thinking of starting a vegetable garden here. Isn't it nice? She boasts to her friends. While we have been busy with work, we managed to get everything ready for the move. By the time we finally move into our new home, it's already been set up in her taste. I've been imagining in my head how I would decorate each room, but her furniture has already been placed as if it's a matter of fact. The yard, which I had planned to use for my hobby, has also been converted into a vegetable garden by her. She's doing whatever she pleases, yet she hasn't paid me the money after 3 months. On top of it all, she dares to tell me something outrageous. I knew she was an insane person, but still. She doesn't ask but tells us that my sister-in-law Janice, who is now a divorced single mother, will move in with us. What on earth are you talking about? I've never been consulted. Shut up! I want to live with my grandchildren, so you get out of this house. What the hell? This is our house to begin with. Why should we leave? You two are working, right? Then it's easier for you to do whatever you want. She's a struggling single mother with small children. That has nothing to do with us. Give me a break. It's supposed to be our home. My in-laws forced their way in, and now they tell us to leave because we are getting in the way. There is no way we let them keep having their way. Even Morgan is furious at the selfishness. A family meeting is held, including his sister, who has returned to the family.
Dad, please put some sense into Mom. This is crazy. Well, I don't know what to say. It's her decision.
He is wrapped around by her little finger and has no intention of helping his own son. There's no point in blaming Dad. I mean, it's not such a big deal, isn't it? You guys don't have kids. You can still do whatever you want if you leave this house. Janice too tries to kick us out for selfish reasons. As for Adele, I don't know what's so funny, but she has been grinning at us. I'm not pleased with it at all, so I speak to my family about it. My grandfather is even angrier than we are.
What a bunch of jerks! I allowed you to use the land.
When he learns what has been going on, he makes a proposal to us. After much discussion with him, my parents, and of course Morgan, we've decided to go ahead with the plan. 3 weeks later, We are ready to act upon it. We are taking advantage of the opportunity, while Janice and her children, who moved in earlier, went on a day trip with my in-laws.
So, do you want me to move everything out?
Yes, every single thing, please. I instruct the movers to remove all of my in-laws' belongings, including ours. A short time after 2 trucks with our belongings leave, my in-laws return home in good spirits. As Morgan and I are waiting for them in the living room, they notice something unusual and come yelling at us in panic.
What's going on? What happened to our stuff?
They were in our way, so while you were enjoying your outing, we asked a mover to remove them.
How selfish of you!
While I fend off Adele, Janice was yelling at Morgan.
Not only are my things gone, but all my kids' stuff too. What do you have gained from doing this?
Oh, we've decided to rent the house out. New tenants will be moving in a couple weeks.
You never mentioned anything about that. You're crazy. This is terrible. We live here. How can you decide such an important matter without asking us?
They protest vehemently when they learn about our plan. We have a thing or two to remind them. Who do you think you are? It was you who decided to let your daughter and her kids move in without asking us.
Well, that's true. But you've been acting like you own the house we built.
On top of it, you're trying to kick us out. Then Morgan joined in.
You haven't paid a penny for this house, Mom. What happened to the money you promised? You weren't going to pay from the beginning anyway, were you?
No, that's not true. It's the agent's fault for not transferring money.
The land here is in my grandfather's name. The house is in our name. We don't need your consent to rent it out. The same goes for Janice, who moved in later. Adele looks shaken and pale, while Janice looks angry and red. Their reactions are similar, as you would expect from the mother and daughter, even though the colors are different.
Your things are in a rental storage, so you take care of the rest yourselves.
Oh no!
Morgan tells them coldly, and the two cry out in anguish. What goes around comes around. My parents-in-law, Janice, and her children haven't got sufficient funds and moved into a small apartment together. 3 adults and 2 children in a 900 square feet 2-bedroom space. It's a no-brainer that their lives have been downgraded. They are supposedly living a life that makes you feel fed up just imagining it. I hear that Adele and Janice blame each other and argue every day. We have cut all contact with them. I didn't realize who they truly were right after we got married. It's probably a good thing that we could cut them off sooner than later. We are back in living in a rented apartment. The rent on the house is coming into our pockets thanks to my considerate grandfather.
You have a lot of things coming up, don't you? Use it for your future.
I really appreciate his offer. We are now living in a spacier apartment than before. We have no complaints about my current life, but if we have a baby in the future, I would like to live in my own house again. Of course, it would be just us.